You don't fall asleep to leave life behind. You fall asleep to enter it more deeply. The body may rest, but the field around you becomes more open, more receptive, more alive. In the silence between your last thought and the slipping away of consciousness, something sacred happens. Your defenses lower. Your mind softens. Your heart whispers what the day didn't let you say. And the energy you carry, even the one you try to ignore, becomes the signal you send into the invisible. That signal is a request, a declaration, a frequency. Sleep isn't where life pauses. It's where your vibration begins to speak louder than your words. And if you listen closely, you'll feel it. The energy you sleep with is the energy you wake into. Again and again. Not as punishment, but as reflection. Sleep is not escape. It is return. There is a narrow passage the soul crosses each night. That soft, quiet threshold between waking and sleep. It's the space where reality becomes fluid, where logic begins to dissolve, and the unseen starts to speak louder than the seen. In this space, the brain shifts into slower waves, alpha, then theta, making you open, suggestible, deeply connected to your inner field. What enters your awareness here doesn't fade. It roots. It anchors itself into your subconscious, where it grows in silence. And that's why what you feel before sleep holds so much weight. The final emotions you carry become like seeds, not of thought, but of vibration. They plant themselves in the quantum soil of your energy field. And from that place, reality begins to take shape. Not from effort, not from force, but from frequency. From what you feel when no one is watching. This is why bedtime is sacred. Because it's not the end of the day, it's the beginning of your next creation. There is a moment, just before the body surrenders to sleep, where silence becomes louder than sound. But for many, this silence is not peaceful. It is crowded. Crowded with echoes of unresolved conversations, future worries disguised as preparation, guilt hidden beneath to-do lists never completed. You lie down, but you do not soften. Your body reclines, but your energy stays upright, alert, restless, unresolved. This emotional static is invisible, but it is strong. And without realizing it, you fall asleep soaked in that frequency. What your body carries into the night does not disappear. It amplifies. The field around you doesn't rest when your eyelids close. It continues, translating, recording, transmitting what you could not digest during the day. That is the trap. To believe that sleep will wash away what you refuse to release. But the quantum field is not forgetful. It is loyal. It reflects back what it receives. And if what it receives is tension, fear, disappointment, then that is what it will mirror. Not as punishment, but as precision. We often think we are safe under the covers, but the real exposure happens here. In this raw space between thought and dream, emotion and silence. This is where manifestation takes its blueprint. This is where vibration becomes language. And that's why lying down full of unresolved noise is not neutral. It's creative. It's instructive. It's magnetic. The frequency you resist becomes the energy that persists. Not because you're doing something wrong, but because your energy is being honest, even when your words aren't. This is why the night is not just sleep. It's an agreement between your inner world and the outer field. And every night, you sign that agreement without speaking a word, only by feeling. Wanting is natural. The soul longs for expansion. The heart dreams not just for pleasure, but for alignment. A remembering of who you truly are beneath the survival scripts. But what happens when the energy behind your desire is fear? What happens when you ask for something not from fullness, but from the fear that it may never come? That's where the silent sabotage begins. Because no matter how beautiful the vision is, if the vibration behind it is anxiety, lack, or urgency, then what you are truly manifesting is not the dream itself, but the fear of it not happening. You may lie in bed at night thinking of the life you want, visualizing love, abundance, healing. But if your heart is clenched while you do it, if your breath is shallow, if your body is tense, if your mind is racing, you're not really dreaming. You're bracing. You're hoping, but also protecting yourself from disappointment. And that protection, that self-defense, that quiet distrust in the timing of life, It sends a different signal to the field. It says, I want this, but I don't believe I'll get it. And that vibration is what the quantum listens to. Not your words, not your wish, but your energetic signature, the tone beneath your thoughts. This is the trap of emotional duality, when your conscious mind says yes, but your unconscious field vibrates no. You can repeat affirmations. You can visualize with intensity. But if your nervous system is still in survival, in scarcity, in guarded fear, the field will mirror that. Not as punishment, not as failure, but as coherence. It will always reflect the dominant frequency. And most of the time, that frequency is not the hope. It's the wound. So many people try to manifest through performance, smiling on the outside while trembling on the inside, speaking trust while feeling panic, saying, I'm ready, while vibrating, I'm terrified. But the field doesn't judge. It only reflects. And until you soften the fear that sits behind your wanting, until you meet the trembling child behind the dream, your manifestations may keep running from you. Not because they are distant, but because your own fear is too loud for them to land. There is a quiet desperation that often hides beneath the surface of our desires. A trembling energy that says, I need this to work. It doesn't scream. It doesn't cry. It whispers. Subtly. Constantly. You feel it in the chest when you visualize something beautiful, and yet your breath shortens. You feel it in your jaw when you speak of your dream life, but your body is tense, ready for disappointment. This is not conscious. It's not dramatic. It's vibrational. A form of energetic resistance that builds not in thought, but in the nervous system. You want something deeply, but you've also learned, silently, through life, that wanting leads to waiting, that dreaming leads to pain. So now, every time you desire, your system prepares for the no. You visualize, but you flinch inside. You affirm, but you hold your breath. You see the image in your mind, but you already grieve the possibility of not getting there. And that grief becomes the dominant signal. That grief becomes the story your body tells the field. This is not your fault. It's conditioning. Generational. Collective. Emotional. Most of us learned to want with fear. We were taught to suppress expectations, to not get our hopes up, to be realistic. So now, when you dare to hope, your body doesn't celebrate, it contracts. And in that contraction, manifestation slows. Not because you're not worthy, but because your frequency says, I'm not safe here. Anxiety is not loud all the time. Sometimes it disguises itself as control, checking timelines, obsessing over details, constantly questioning signs. The obsession is not power. It's panic. It's trying to force alignment through hypervigilance. But the field doesn't respond to effort. It responds to coherence. And coherence only happens when the mind, heart, and body are aligned. When you're not just wanting something, but trusting the space it comes from. Wanting with peace is magnetism. Wanting with anxiety is resistance. One opens the door. The other knocks endlessly on a wall that doesn't move. And many don't realize they are doing this every night, falling asleep with a heart full of longing and a body full of fear. The two cancel each other out. Not in concept, but in frequency. Not in words, but in the silent code that tells the universe what you really believe about receiving. And until that code changes, the cycle continues. Before scarcity becomes a thought, it becomes a feeling. Before it becomes a mindset, it becomes a pattern in the body. A signal. A chemistry. We often say, I think I'm not enough, or I believe there won't be money, but those are just the final echoes of something much deeper. Scarcity doesn't start in the mind. It starts in the nervous system. In the way your stomach tightens when the bills arrive. In the way your shoulders curl forward when you check your bank account. In the way you inhale hope but exhale worry. This is not just thought. This is biology. The body remembers what the mind tries to forget. It stores the imprints of every moment you felt unsupported, invisible, or unsafe. Every time abundance didn't come. Every time you waited for help and no one showed up. Every time you needed, and the universe was silent. And now, as an adult trying to manifest something new, your mind says yes, but your cells still remember the no. They're cautious. They're protecting you. They release cortisol before you sleep, not because you want to, but because your body still thinks it's nighttime in a dangerous world. We try to change our beliefs without touching the body. We say affirmations with our mouth, while our chest vibrates fear. We visualize abundance while our heart races as if it's being chased. That's why so many people feel exhausted by manifestation work, because they're trying to override survival with thought. But the body doesn't listen to words. It listens to signals. And scarcity is not just a lack of money, it's the absence of safety. It's the sensation that no matter how much you try, something might still go wrong. That feeling sends more messages to the quantum field than any journal ever could. And here's what most don't realize. When you go to sleep, that signal doesn't stop. It deepens. The subconscious absorbs it like water into dry soil. It says, so this is still our truth. This is what we vibrate. This is what we repeat. And what is repeated is created. Not because the universe is cruel, but because it is precise. It matches what you're anchored in. Not what you hope for, but what you embody. The good news is, patterns can be rewritten. But not with pressure. Not with mental force. With softness. With presence. With awareness that says, I see you, body. I see the fear. And I no longer shame you for protecting me. Because only when you don't fall asleep like flipping a switch. You descend. Gently. Through invisible layers of awareness. The brain shifts its frequency, moving from the alertness of beta waves into alpha, then into the twilight state of theta. It's not just a neurological transition. It's a portal. A vibrational passage that opens only when the noise softens. In alpha, the mind relaxes. The inner critic grows quiet. In theta, the door to the subconscious creaks open. You begin to receive more than you think. And everything that touches you here, emotionally, symbolically, energetically, begins to shape what your nervous system believes is real. Neuroscience has shown that this pre-sleep state is a time of high neuroplasticity, which means your brain is rewiring. Not later, not in the middle of a meditation, but here, in the final moments before you drift off. Your thoughts don't just fade. They leave fingerprints. Your feelings don't dissolve. They embed themselves as patterns, neural, hormonal, and energetic. This is the moment when intention becomes instruction. Not because you force it, but because you're open, available, permeable to truth. That's why what you feel right before you sleep carries more power than what you repeat all day long. Because in this state, there is no defense. The mind is no longer blocking. The body is no longer bracing. You are suggestible, not weak, but ready. And that readiness allows your inner world to imprint itself into the quantum field with clarity, with purity, with force. Joe Dispenza often says, where you place your attention is where you place your energy. And before sleep, that becomes even more literal. If your attention is on fear, then your energy vibrates in protection. If your attention is on gratitude, then your field expands into coherence. The brain does not question your truth. It absorbs it, repeats it, sends it forward into the unseen. And so, without realizing it, you are training your future in the final 10 minutes of your day. Not with discipline, but with presence. The question is never just, what do I want? It's, what emotional truth am I rehearsing tonight? Because that truth, the one that echoes through your nervous system while you sleep, becomes the foundation for everything that comes next. You don't manifest only when you're awake. You manifest when your mind is soft. When your brain is between worlds, not fully conscious, not yet asleep. This is the state of alpha and theta. Most people pass through it quickly, unaware of the power it holds. But this is the moment when the gate opens. The mind becomes sponge-like. The ego quiets. The stories lose form. And what you feel, not what you say, but what you truly feel, enters the subconscious unfiltered. In alpha, your thoughts are slowed but still coherent. It's the space of gentle reflection, soft focus, relaxed attention. The nervous system begins to release its grip. You begin to descend. In theta, you are closer to sleep, closer to the realm of dreams, but not quite gone. Here, imagination and memory blend. Feeling becomes more vivid. Time begins to dissolve. And this state, as subtle as it seems, is one of the most powerful moments for reprogramming your energetic field. Children live in theta for the first years of life. That's why they absorb everything. Not just words, but emotional tones, postures, reactions, patterns. Their beliefs are not chosen, they are received. And the same happens with you every night if you learn to stay conscious just a little longer. To feel what you're sending out. To sense what your energy is saying without words. Because in this state, the universe is listening. And it listens not to volume, but to vibration. That's why a quiet fear before sleep is louder than a spoken affirmation during the day. That's why one sincere feeling of gratitude, felt fully in the chest just before drifting off, creates more movement in the field than hours of mental repetition. Alpha and theta don't just make you receptive to suggestions. They make you energetically porous, open to new templates, new truths, new realities. But only if you bring awareness to them. If you fall asleep unconsciously, the old programs take over. The fear, the unworthiness, the exhaustion, they replay themselves in a loop. Not as punishment, but as default. But if you begin to meet this liminal space with intention, not as pressure, but as presence, everything begins to change. Slowly, silently, powerfully. Joe Dispenza teaches that the brain does not simply store memories or process thoughts. It reflects patterns, emotional patterns, chemical patterns, vibrational signatures. It is a mirror not just of the past, but of your energetic now. The moment you feel something deeply, repeatedly, your brain begins to map that sensation. It builds networks. It reconfigures chemistry. And over time, those vibrations become your internal reality. Not because they are objectively true, but because they have become consistent, familiar, practiced. The pre-sleep state is the perfect moment to interrupt this map, or to reinforce it. When your brain enters those slower waves, it stops filtering. It begins to absorb. And what it absorbs isn't random. It's your dominant state, your dominant emotion. If you fall asleep rehearsing lack, that lack gets coded. If you fall asleep remembering betrayal, that emotion becomes the new normal. The brain, like a hologram, projects what it receives over and over again, until it forgets it was once a response and begins to believe it's reality. But here's where the magic happens. You can speak to the brain in the language it understands: repetition, emotion, imagery, and coherence. Before sleep, when the mind is soft and the heart is more exposed, you can introduce a new vibration. Not just with thoughts, but with feeling, with sensory experience, with imagery so vivid your body begins to believe it's already true. This is the essence of quantum change, not hoping for a different future, but embodying the emotional signature of that future before it arrives. Your brain does not know the difference between a memory and a visualization deeply felt. It doesn't distinguish between what you lived and what you imagined with enough coherence. That's why before sleep, your energy becomes a blueprint. The universe doesn't wait for your dream to come true. It responds to your certainty that it already is. And the more consistently you embody that truth, the more the brain begins to mirror it. Not as a fantasy, but as a new reality in progress. It's not always the big traumas that shape your vibration. Sometimes it's the small, quiet repetitions. The moments you lay in bed and think the same thought for the 100th time. It's too late. Nothing changes. Why is it always so hard? These phrases are not just ideas. They are emotional signatures, and the more they repeat, the more the subconscious registers them as truth. Not because they are powerful, but because they are familiar. And what is familiar becomes magnetic. Each night, the mind becomes more open, more receptive. And if you feed it the same emotion again and again, sadness, fear, frustration, that feeling becomes coded into your energetic baseline. You don't just think the thought. You become it. And when it happens at night, in silence, without resistance, the repetition becomes reinforcement. The body listens. The field listens. The same vibration that caused pain becomes the very one you keep unintentionally manifesting. This is why sleep is sacred, Because every night, you have the opportunity to either rehearse your wound or rewire your future. But you cannot do both. If you fall asleep unconsciously, tangled in the same inner dialogue, your manifestation work is undone. Not because you're wrong, but because the energy isn't coherent. The night becomes a mirror of your internal state. Not of your goals. Not of your affirmations. But of what you feel in secret. You do not need to fight your thoughts. You need to choose which feelings you want to water. And that choice is not mental, it's vibrational. Ask yourself gently, what emotional story am I feeding tonight? Because that story becomes the seed. And the universe is not judging you. It is echoing you. Tonight, as you lay your head down, the universe will listen. Not to your words, not to your wishes, but to the silent frequency you carry within. This frequency, born of feeling, repeated in thought, anchored in the body, becomes your conversation with the field. The pillow beneath you is not just fabric. It is memory. It holds the echoes of every night you cried quietly. Every night you hoped secretly. Every night you rehearsed a version of yourself that no longer needs to survive, but is still afraid to receive. And yet, something new is possible. A different sleep. A sleep where you don't escape, but enter. Not into dreams of longing, but into the feeling of arrival. Neville Goddard didn't say, imagine it. He said, live in the end. Feel what it's like to already be who you are becoming. Not with effort, but with surrender. Let your body feel the reality of what your mind cannot yet prove. Let your heart soften into the version of you that is no longer chasing, just receiving. Bruce Lipton reminds us, the subconscious does not judge the seed you plant. It simply grows what you repeat. So plant gently. Plant with reverence. Not in fear, not in pressure, but in presence. Because sleep is not the pause between days. It is the soil where the next version of you takes root. And if this message touched something inside you, something quiet, something that doesn't have words, but has always been there, then honor it. Stay connected. Share this space. Let others feel this truth too. Like this video if it resonated with your journey. Comment below what emotion you are choosing to release tonight. Share it with someone who still sleeps inside fear. And subscribe, not just to this channel, but to the deeper path within you that is finally ready to receive what it asked for so long ago. May your night be soft. May your vibration be whole. May your next reality begin before your eyes even open.